Namaskar, viewers. Uh, I'm Pradeep Kaushal, and we have with us senior journalist Shekhar Iyer. So, Shekhar, we would talk about the current Bangladesh scene. Namaskar. So, we are talking about
Namaskar.
the Bangladesh current scene, and now you must have observed that there is a tendency in New Bangladesh, as I would like to call it. There is an inclination to disown the entire legacy of Mujibur Rahman as if he never existed. And also, India never liberated Bangladesh. And to cap it, there is a new kind of bonhomie between Bangladesh and Pakistan. Pakistan has urged Bangladesh to forge a strategic relationship with Pakistan, and then we have Arakan army. There are reports of the Myanmarese rebel group entering Bangladesh. So, what is your take on it?
Well, definitely a lot of things have happened since Sheikh Hasina was forced to leave Bangladesh and seek refuge in India. It was made out that all that happened there was a consequence of a public uprising against a dictatorial regime under Sheikh Hasina. And this was all about internal politics of Bangladesh and not particularly any external element was involved because way it started with reservation for in schools and colleges and jobs for kith and kin of those who were considered as martyrs in the liberation struggle of 1971, which led to the creation of Bangladesh, undoubtedly with the help of India. And it was started with that over the quota system there, and the students uprising was over in protest against that quota because that quota was considered something as sacred as the quota we have here for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes and OBC. So Sheikh Hasina's year was that those who had sacrificed, those who had laid down their lives in the liberation war, just headed by her father, late Awami League leader Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, they have to be honored, and that those families have suffered. So they deserve to be protected under a kind of an affirmative action. So there was an uprising, and then we saw a situation came to head where the Islamists there, the banned parties like Jamaat Islami and the main opposition BNP, everybody joins hands along with these student groups, and finally it led to a situation where army advised Sheikh Hasina that it would be in her interest to leave the country at this juncture. She didn't even have time to submit a resignation. That is why today she is actually the Bangladesh Prime Minister in exile, because the Bangladesh president said he had not received any resignation letter. He was awaiting her arrival. But before that, the situation so deteriorated, and these rebel student leaders and the mob was marching towards her palace that she was asked to leave immediately within 30 or 40 minutes. And when it all happened, everybody thought this is something to do with Sheikh Hasina's domestic politics or policies or whatever. And it is not just Sheikh Hasina's government, even the previous government, led by Khalida Zia, also had a similar record when it came to dealing with opposition, came dealing with dissent. Now, that we assume is an internal matter of Bangladesh. But subsequently, what we have seen is ever since, suddenly you find Western countries joining and parachuting Mohammed Yunus, who is an arch political rival of Sheikh Hasina. He takes over under a very unusual designation of chief advisor.
Yeah, I know.
And
Very
it,
strange scheme of things that you have an advisor running the country having the powers of a prime minister without being one. Yes.
and the whole idea was to as if to do away with the election which was contested by these parties as not being free and fair. But what happened subsequently is has only opened our eyes, which is what? Suddenly you found attacks on Hindu minorities in Bangladesh, which we assume had nothing to do with the problems that the opposition was facing under Modi. Because if it was something to do with the politics of that country, why target minorities? So naturally, there was concern that why are temples being targeted? Why are the Hindu minority groups, not only Hindus, even Buddhists, Chakmas, they were all targeted. And that baffled a very simple understanding. But as we saw the ban on Jamaat, this Jamaatul Islam, on the Jamaat, the ban was lifted. So was ban was lifted on BNP and other groups. So and then ban was also lifted on Jatiya Party. And along with that, we saw why targeted attack on minorities. So naturally, our government was concerned. We were all concerned, and those concerns were conveyed to the Bangladesh government. We were told, no, this is happening because Hindu minorities were seen as supporters of Sheikh Hasina. That is why they were targeted, but it is an exaggeration. Now, this exaggeration argument has been repeatedly offered to all of us and to the rest of the world also, that it is not as bad as being made out. But what we have seen is videos that are coming from Bangladesh, reports coming from Bangladesh, and finally the assault on ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, as if they are, some kind of a force in Bangladesh and they were behind Sheikh Hasina. So one could see a pattern, and the pattern was target the minorities. Now I am asking, I am posing a parallel question, because there has been a complete silence from the Western world to what is happening there. If Muslims are targeted in India, and if India offers an explanation that Muslims are targeted here because they are seen as supporters of the opposition Congress party, will that argument be accepted by the rest of the world? Or even we will accept that argument? Similarly, this explanation was being offered, and Western governments were willing to accept that. All the so-called human rights organizations, which went on to show that this whole idea of an uprising there, now we know that lot of planning has gone. And Sheikh Hasina herself, she visited US, and she didn't have a very good discussions with the US President Biden or other officials. She came back. Repeatedly questions were asked about how the elections were conducted, and the legitimacy of her election was questioned. Then all these developments happened. And she had been expressing fear that she has been under pressure from Western governments, particularly the American deep state, for various reasons. And she even exercised a fear. The whole idea is even to create a Christian homeland similar to what happened in Indonesia, where East Timor was, made into a Christian enclave and was granted independence. So all these has fueled suspicion that some deep factors are at work, some deep actors are at work.
Now,
And constant.
yes, now that we have that Arakan army elements getting very active on the Bangladesh-Myanmar border, do you think it has something to do with that idea of the creation of a Christian state?
So there are several things happening in Bangladesh, and particularly between Bangladesh and Myanmar border. Because
Yes.
there is also a speculation that this Arkan army has chosen to make frequent forays into Bangladesh, because there is also dispute over the reports claiming they control 270 square kilometer area in Bangladesh. But that we are told is an area which is, these are all not properly patrolled areas or not very clearly demarcated areas. But we know that Arkan army, has been a force by itself. That whole region has been out of bounds for the military junta government in Rangoon. So we know that that place has been totally ungoverned. I mean, it has been a state like that. And also, there is a talk that even what is happening in Bangladesh has a lot to do with how some kind of an assistance is going from here to Arakan side, particularly export of food items like potatoes, which are in short supply in that part of Myanmar, because they can't get supplies from Rangoon. So therefore, all the stock is there. And the other thing is in the Mizoram border, the border with Mizoram and Manipur, there is a battle going on between the rebels there and the military, the Burmese military, Myanmar's military. And the cookies who are there on that part of the border and also as this part of the border, many of them have fled to India, and which is cited as one of the reasons for the current unrest in Manipur. So the whole region is in a ferment. The whole region there is in a ferment because of instability in Burma, and now this new development in Bangladesh, where there seems to be somebody calling shots there who are not exactly people sitting in Dhaka, but they are taking instructions from outside Bangladesh.
So, in other words, it looks like, I mean, you tell me whether you agree with this thesis or not, that there is a grand design, and whatever is happening on the Bangladesh Myanmar border is a part of a larger design rather than being a localized affair. Is it so?
There are two views to this. Whether it is the deep state of US or whether it is the role of the Chinese themselves, because Chinese all have deep interest in Myanmar. They have also have deep interest in those areas which are currently under Arakan army, where it is believed there are huge mineral deposits, huge oil deposits. And it has not been conclusively proved which is the factor at work there. Because Sheikh Hasina herself had voiced concern that there is an attempt to create a Christian land there. And we know in Nagaland particularly, you had two NSCN groups, the Nationalist Socialist Council of Nagaland, whose credo was Nagaland for Christ. Subsequently, they laid down arms. They have been in talks for a long time with the Indian government and how to get them into accept the Indian constitution. There are still disputes with these. The talks have made a lot of headway, but they are stuck on the question of a separate flag and a separate symbol for Nagaland. So this is on other side, but definitely the role of the church in these areas and the role of the church as agents of the deep state. Now these are things which are definitely are of concern, and the particularly manner in which ISKCON has been targeted in Bangladesh, and a monk particularly Chinmoy, who was targeted, who was all because he was protesting against attack on temples. And further, Pradeep ji, what is happening there is now there is a problem arising between the opposition parties there, whether it is Jamaat Islami or BNP, Mohammed Yunus. There is a problem. The problem is the opposition parties are now they are very, they think the job is over of the students because they have already overthrown Sheikh Hasina, which they could never do by way of election. Now that she is gone, now they want a fresh election. Whereas the student groups, they have tasted power. They are talking of rewriting the Bangladesh constitution. So
No, Yunus
there is a
already
there is
Mohammed Yunus has already indicated that he is not in a hurry to hold elections. He would wait for a year or so. And by then, I think BNP would run out of patience. They had thought, as you pointed out, they had thought that students having done their job of overthrowing the Hasina government, it is they who should, as in the past, that it is their turn to return to power now, but they must be very disappointed with that. But coming back to the China interest, that Chinese interest in the area, it is true that China would have its own designs as far as this area is concerned, but a West controlled, a country, Christian country controlled by the West, would be the last thing the Chinese would want the next door, because they know that that kind of new country would pose a great threat to China. So they would not want it in any circumstances. What do you think?
no, that is all the more the question is being raised about what is the motive of the deep state in ensuring Sheikh Hasina's exit and putting one Mohammed Yunus there. And Mohammed Yunus doesn't command that kind of a political capacity or that kind of a political appeal across Bangladesh. He is
Yeah,
known
he's
for his
just a
contribution to
face.
micro, I
He's
mean,
just a
face and of
face.
a micro, and even that was subject to a lot of allegations of corruption. That is why he had a running battle with Sheikh Hasina, who filed cases against him, saying there has been a financial irregularities in the so-called micro bank, which Grameen Bank, which was touted as a great example of devolution of the monetary help to the poorest to the poor in Bangladesh. There has been a lot of things. Now, see, the students have set up some groups. They have set up some 5 or 6 committee to bring about the kind of amendments to the constitution. Both Jamaat as well as BNP are saying this job of amending the constitution is our job. Let elections be held, we will decide. Let the new parliament be formed. So, as you said, Pradeep ji, that patience is running out. So, we may see in this year, in 2025, things may spin out of control. And also the fact that there is a change of government in Washington. January 20th, you will have a new government.
Yes, Trump may act as a spanner in the works. He
So,
doesn't, he's not
see,
known to
no,
share a good equation with Muhammad Yunus. So I think Muhammad Yunus can look for some bad time ahead after Donald Trump is sworn in as the US president, isn't it?
so that is why there is a reasonable speculation. These whole things were hurried up in Bangladesh before the US presidential election. Just as a lot of things were done to escalate the tension in Ukraine by giving permission to use American cruise missiles there against Russia, which has only escalated the problem. When Trump was talking of trying to bring a ceasefire because of the kind of equation he has had with Russian President Putin, suddenly you find things are being escalated there before he takes over on January 20th.
Yeah, just to
You
make it more difficult for Trump, make it more difficult for him to secure peace in that area.
know,
Trump
even
wants.
kill even the killing of a top Russian general, where it is believed that Ukraine, the credit has been given to the Ukraine secret service for bumping off a Russian top general who was in charge of biological and nuclear warfare. This is similar to what happened to the Revolutionary Guard top person Sulami, who
Soleimani.
was Soleimani. The way Soleimani was killed. Now,
Hmm.
this has only escalated matters. It has not. So therefore, what is there is a lot of uncertainty. But at the same time, Pradeep ji, what is of concern to us is now a very concerted attempt, as you mentioned in the introduction, that an attempt is being made somehow to redo the separation, to redo the creation of Bangladesh, because the whole trouble there was the imposition of West Pakistan's diktats over East Pakistan. One was a Bangla speaking nation, a nation by itself, united by the language of Bangla. The other was Pakistan, which was more of a Punjabi dominated administration and military, which believed in imposing Urdu on East Pakistan and refusal to accept the provincial elections that were held in East Pakistan, which were won by Awami League led by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. That is how it all started. Now people have forgotten all that. Our people are being made to forget all that, and the whole idea is to, in the name of Islamist unity, we are hearing all these things, even to downplay our role in the birth of Bangladesh.
I feel that there is a deliberate attempt to irritate India as much as possible and to provoke India to intervene in Bangladesh and get drawn into some avoidable conflict there and create a Russia like situation for us, that once we get into that kind of trouble, then the entire India story that takes a beating. There is an attempt to push us into that kind of trouble, so that we forget about our economic development. So the role India is looking for, that goal of ours gets as further as possible. What do you think of that?
So I will entirely agree with you, Pradeepji, because there is somehow to draw India into that kind of a vortex of which there can be no final solution. But India's right now a very, I would say, very focused approach is now to see that attacks on the minorities are stopped. We saw Prime Minister Modi's government sending the Foreign Secretary, Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri to Bangladesh, where it was emphasized that things should not be allowed to go out of control. And definitely the attacks on minorities must stop. And Mohammed Yunus knows very well that you cannot trifle with a power like India, not just because of the military power or the shape and size of this country. It is because it's a rising economic power. And the rise of Bangladesh and even the growth in Bangladesh economy had a lot to do with where things were synchronized with India. India played a good role in the boost under Sheikh Hasina. Now, if all these already we are hearing about the trouble the garment industry of Bangladesh is facing, international orders have stopped. Now, ultimately, the Bangladesh will hurtle down into an abyss from which it cannot come out. Because all these deep state players, you are seeing what is happening in Syria. Even all these international players, whether it is Russia or America, if it doesn't serve their interest anymore, they will leave it.
Yeah,
Now, under
you must have
under
seen there was what we heard from Bangladesh, one of the younger elements in the new dispensation. He said, "We want Bihar, we want Odisha, we want parts of Assam, and we would invade." That was a particularly provocative statement, basically designed to push us into that kind of ugly conflict. Huh? Bangladesh
it,
is militarily no match to India. We would not enhance our stature by getting into any armed conflict with us, but there's a limit to which you can take things. So people are testing our patience, people are testing our ability to act in a restrained manner. So there is a clear desire to block India from moving forward, and to basically stop the India growth story. So we have to be very mindful of that. That while we take effective measures to protect the minorities there, we take effective measures to maintain our self-respect, but at the same time, Bangladesh is not really worth an armed conflict. And I think a lot of vested interests are at work to push India into that kind of situation. Yes, it was very fruitful talking with you, Shekhar. So we'll keep it up, and next time we would again come before our viewers with another topic. So for that, goodbye to all of you, and please press the like button if you have liked our conversation. Thank you so much.
thank you, thank you very
Thank you.
much.